Hello and welcome everybody to the official virtual launch party for Lindsay's book, The Wayward Sword. We are very, very excited to have all of you guys here. It has been a year in the making since we have done Lindsay's campaign, which is crazy to believe that it's time has gone by that fast. So we are very, very excited to have all of you guys here. We are going to be introducing you to Lindsay here in just a moment. And just to kind of give you a little bit of a background, I am SD Howard. I am the founder and head of publishing for Storyweaver Publishing. And I had the opportunity to read through Lindsay's book at the very beginning, and I loved it. There were so many elements that I'm so excited for you guys to see. I have been writing for a very long time. It hurts my soul a little bit to admit just how long I have been writing, but there were plot twists in here that genuinely took me by surprise and that I didn't see coming. And it is always a joy for me when that happens. So I know you guys are going to love this book. So let's bring on Lindsay, and then we're going to dive into some questions. I have about 7 questions prepared for her, and then we're going to dive into a Q&A session towards the end. And so this is a perfect opportunity for you guys to ask all of the questions, whether it's world building, writing process, everything. Put Lindsay on the spot, and we're going to have a absolutely fantastic time. And drop your comments over in the chat. I will be able to see them, and the fun part is we'll be able to bring them up onto the screen during the live stream, and we can interact with you guys that way as well. So super excited that you guys are here, and let's welcome Lindsay. Hey, Lindsay.
Oh, you can't see. Hi.
So a year since the campaign, and your book is published. You're officially a published author.
I know. It's weird to think about. This has quite literally been my dream since 3rd grade. So it's weird to see it actually happen and come to fruition, and it's like, oh, it's no longer a dream.
Yeah, it is a very surreal experience when your book is live, but you don't have the book yet, which we are trying to remedy. We are in process of fixing that.
That's another aspect of, like, it doesn't quite feel real yet. It's like, I haven't held my book yet.
Yeah.
It's out there.
Yep. So it's going to be, it's such a fun time. It's probably one of my favorite times for new authors is when they get that experience of, like, my book is out there, but it's very ethereal, so I don't really know what to do with it at the moment.
Yeah.
So for the people watching, let's go ahead and dive into the first question, because I think it makes the most sense. Why don't you tell me and the readers a little bit about yourself and what got you into writing in the first place?
Oh, so this is a really interesting question. Funny enough, when I was a little girl, way back yonder. Oh gosh. Let me start over. Sorry, I'm getting flustered. When I was a little girl, I actually hated reading, like, horribly so. I grew up in a family of readers. They loved fantasy, reading, all of that, and I just hated it so much, to the point of when I was in 3rd grade, one of the, like, assignments, because in 3rd grade you're still kind of, like, learning to read and stuff, right? So to back up, my sister's 3 years older than me. When she was in 3rd grade, and there was a task where you were supposed to read aloud to a parent or guardian for 10 minutes. When she was in 3rd grade, she worked with my dad through The Hobbit. I read Fox and Socks so many times, the tongue twisters didn't trip me up anymore. And I could read it 2+ times in 10 minutes, to the point where I would flip to start it over a third time. My father went, "No, get a new book, please."
That's my favorite Dr. Seuss. It's such a good book.
I don't actually remember it anymore, but I don't know why I latched onto that one. I was just like, I'm gonna do Fox and Socks. I'm gonna do it every single time. And I got so good at it that my dad was like, "No, I am cutting you off. You have to pick another book." So it's interesting to think that it all started, I did not like reading. Parallel to that, I had really, really bad handwriting for a kid. Part of that's probably because I'm left-handed. There is kind of a correlation in there.
Hey, left-handy.
Yay! And my mom was just like, "No, you are," ironically, I was like a second or third grader, and she was like, "No, I'm not doing this anymore. You need to have legible handwriting. I don't care." So she got me a notebook. I got to pick out the notebook. I got to pick out the pens. And she was like, "You are going to practice your handwriting." And I was like, "What am I going to write?" And she was like, "I don't know, write a story. You're always playing pretend with your friends, and you always come up with really creative, really interesting. You have a wonderful imagination. Like, write a story." My first story I ever wrote was this like half a page. I don't even know what I wrote, but I remember it was half a page, this notebook. It was like blue with strawberries on it. And I just went, "I want to do this for a living." Which is ironic, considering it was right around the time that I was like, I didn't like reading books, but I wanted to write stories.
Yeah, you know.
It worked out somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Eventually, I understood it. I got the hype of books. I understood it. I started reading. I found a couple. My parents were determined to find a book series they were like, "We will find you a book that you will read, that you will enjoy reading. You will understand it. You will get it." And my mom found that book series, and I still have it on my bookshelf because it's so special to me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. But then it just, never went away. Third grade, I was like, "I'm gonna be an author someday." And here I am.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I didn't have that level of commitment because I hated writing. I despised writing with every fiber of my being up until I was like 16. And then at that point, I was just like, this is just what life is now. It's going to be writing books. And then nothing could stop me. But did you ever have the people who were like, "So what do you want to be when you grow up?" And then you would tell them, "Oh, I want to be an author." And then when they were done laughing, you reiterated that you wanted to be an author. And they're like, "Oh, Did you ever have that?
See, I had almost the reversal where I was just like, yeah, eventually I want to be an author, but like I'm gonna do all these other. I'm gonna figure out a different way to get there. And I had a lot of family members who were just like, "So are you writing your book yet? Like, how's your book going?" And like always invested. And my one particular person that comes to mind for that was my uncle, he was my Uncle Jimmy, but his name was James. And he's actually one of the men I dedicated Wayward Sword to.
Oh, very cool.
When I think, oh my gosh, I was in 4th or 5th grade or like early middle school, and I was working on a story, and I was publishing it on this little website called Wattpad.
Hey.
And I casually mentioned it to him one time. And then the next time I saw him, he was just like, "Okay, so where's the rest of the story?" I was like, "What?" He had gone on to Wattpad and read the like 9 chapters I had there. And he was just like, "So I need the rest of the story. You need to keep going." And I was just like, I don't have anything more written. I I can't keep going. So I feel very blessed that my parents are like, so when you're like a New York Times bestseller, you're making millions off your book, then you can pay off our house, you could pay off our mortgage, and it'll be great. And I'm like, I'm gonna be lucky if I sell 12 books. Like, you believe it in me more than I believe in me right now.
Yeah, so it's crazy how people always spend your money after they're like, once you're famous, and I'm like, once I'm famous, I'm buying myself a house on an island somewhere so I can I can avoid people so I can write. Like, I might give you a wing of the castle somewhere. Like,
hey, you know what? They're selling castles in Scotland, and all you have to do is like maintain it.
Yeah. See, don't tempt me, Frodo, because like that's some like next level nerd dreams going on right there.
Yeah.
So when it comes to writing, and you started off, third grade, you're like, I hate it, but now this is what my life is going to look like.
Yeah.
Is talking to myself and writing about the conversations I have. What led you to writing, and how was it that the Lord used that in your life?
Well, I did kind of go over a little bit of that in the last question, where it was kind of like, my parents were determined to find a book that I would read, that I would enjoy. And, I was a totally like frilly little girl, like typical little girl. And so they were like, okay, we're going to find you this book. And they found me this princess book. That was a very silly princess book, but it was a chapter book and it didn't have pictures. And I was like, why are you making me read a book without pictures? Because that's, the age I was at. And I read it and I fell in love with it. And it was back when Borders still existed. Think back before Barnes and Noble, there was Borders.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I got the first 3 books for Christmas, and there was a 4th book. But the 4th book hadn't come out yet. And as soon as I found out, it was my first experience with pre-ordering a book. My mother was so excited that I was reading a book that she went and she pre-ordered this book, and we went and we picked it up from Borders.
Awesome.
And this is, early 2000s. I was like, I don't even know how it happened. I don't know how it worked, but it happened. So that was the series. It's The Frog Princess by E.D. Baker, which is a very cute little book series for little girls. That was the book series that got me into reading. But the one that got me into writing, I would probably attribute to Percy Jackson and the Olympians, because that was one of the big defining series of my childhood. And it was a very distinct standout for the voice of those books, which I'm gonna guess you've read them. If not, you
haven't. No.
To
Don't
be fair,
hate
you
me,
probably
viewers. Don't hate me. I'm sorry.
When it was coming out. But it's about a boy who finds out that he is the son of Poseidon. And so all the Greek gods exist, but what really made this series stand out was the voice. It was so funny, so perfectly written for young adults. It's still a very treasured series in my heart. But it had such a unique voice, and it was written so differently than any other book I'd read that I was just like, books don't have to be written in a certain way. They can be written in different ways. And yeah, and then, I was a little girl. I played pretend all the time, and I remember playing pretend with one of my best friends when I was a little girl, and we would act out this scene, and as little girls are wont to do death scenes, dramatic death scenes. we would have 4 or 5, and then suddenly they would come back to life, and I was like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. The story, like, you should die. Like, why do you keep coming back to life? And because I'm thinking of the story, and she's like, but I want to keep playing.
Right.
So I don't know. It just kind of one of those things that popped up in my life and then never went away. It's kind of always been a part of me, but as for how the Lord's used it is that, especially with I would say especially with this series, but I think with like any serious idea I've had, um, it has helped me to understand the Lord a lot more.
Mm.
And the title we give to him, because we give him that he's a great author. And there's kind of this experience of being an author when you're looking at your little gremlin minions that you're maneuvering around on the game board, and you know the map, and you know where everyone is and what everyone's thoughts are, and you know where their storyline is going, you know that where they're going to end up, but you know that they're going to have to go through hard times, and they're going to have to go through dark times. And it's the classic of when you're a reader and you're reading your favorite character go through something really dark and scary, and you're like, why would you do that? But as the author, you're like, no, you have to go through this, because if you don't, then you're not going to be the character at the end that you need to be. So it's helped me to understand that idea of the Lord existing outside of time, and that, like, when I think about my characters, and it's like I can kind of pinpoint any part of their timeline where they are in the story and like kind of zoom in on that part, but I can also zoom out. I can see the whole character arc. I can see the whole story at once. So that there's that element, but it's also helped a lot with the idea of having to go through pain and darkness, and that, there is a reason for it. And it might be a reason I learn 20 years down the road, and it might be a reason I never learn. But that idea of, like, my character's pain is growth. And I think that there is a bit of that lacking from modern day publishing. There's a lot of lack of actually making characters do bad things, letting them do bad things, I should say, and letting them go through hurt and pain, and not negating it by, oh, we're going to just like turn it around or make it perfect, or like everything's going to be fine. Because, there's magical healing in this world.
Right.
Yeah. So
that's really good, because I agree in that it does help us as authors to have some of that perspective, where we're looking at the things that are going on in our life and we go, why? And when we then step back and look at it from the Lord's perspective of like, oh, he sees all of it, and I'm only seeing where I'm at now. I can't see over that second act or third act. Like that's not the viewpoint I have, but he does. And trying to trust in that.
Yeah.
Our characters don't trust us because they know us well enough. They're like, we'll be fine. And it's like,
no, you're not.
Not after 3 chapters from now. So I think that's a great lead into, like, so why this story? And then what was it about the Wayward Sword that demanded to be written? Was it just because Uncle Jimmy was like, you need to finish this? Or, or was there something else?
So sadly, he never got to know about this story. It was a completely different story.
Gotcha.
I think he would have loved this story. And I think he would have come to me after the end of the book and been like, so where's the rest of the book? Like, don't make me wait. Like, why are you making me wait? He was a hoot. He was very much a hoot. But so funny enough, this story started with a map design that I made back in 8th grade. I have no idea where it came from, but I remember coming in from lunch to going into my English class, and I sat down and I had this like notebook and frantically drawing this world and randomly naming it. And that's where it started. It started with this map. I had no concept of the characters. I had no concept of what it was going to become. Funny enough, I actually have the original map framed on my wall because I was like, I bought an empty frame and I was like, what should I put in this? Oh, I guess I could put that. That's kind of cool. But like I said, it started with a very different but very similar idea. But I also was an 8th grader, and at the time, I was actually working on a sci-fi dystopian book novella that I was writing for NaNoWriMo. I've forgotten about this. And so I was just like, yeah, that's gonna be my big thing, and then, no, it didn't. That one fell into void, and my mother is still upset at me because I ended it on a cliffhanger.
Oh, no.
I actually have I still have it saved on my phone. My friend, who was, like, one of my fans, but, very close friend in middle school at the time, she read the whole thing and then sent me a very long voicemail at like 11 o'clock at night. And she was just like, what do you mean that's how it ends? Where's the rest of it? Why would you do this to me? I'm invested. But then the next like fantasy idea that I wanted to shift toward was actually a like modern day idea. So like, I had this map and I had this fledgling of an idea. But I was like, no, I'm too intimidated by the idea of doing high fantasy, otherworld. Like, I don't know how to actually do that. That's too scary. I don't know enough of the technicality. So I'm going to stick with this other idea that's like fully modern day, but with like magical elements and there's this organization. And I had planned out, the more I planned out and the more I figured out about this idea, I was like, this is going to be like my break idea. This is going to be my debut. This is what I'm going to start with. And I had titles for all the books. I had an idea. I had this whole big character map that I still have buried somewhere. And it got so out of hand. It was like 6 books long. There was like 20 main characters. And I'm in high school. I was like, I can't do this. This is too big. This is too insane. And then one day that little flip switched because while I had been like brute forcing this initial idea, this modern day fantasy idea, in the back of my mind, Valara was just building and building and building. And it was all these little subtle connections. And then suddenly I had the full cast and I knew kind of what the characters' arcs were going to be and what the magic system was going to be and what the plot lines were going to be. And then I was sitting there trying to brute force this idea. And then suddenly I went, I know the entire plot of this series. Why am I trying to work on this idea that's not working when I should just focus on this one that does? But it was still that very intimidating switch because, like I said, I had no idea how to write high fantasy. I had never tried up to that point. The closest thing I'd gotten was when I'd written that dystopian one that was a futuristic end of the world sort of situation with more sci-fi elements, which was definitely not inspired by a different book series that had come out and become an immediate obsession. Not at all. So It kind of just demanded to be written by the way of it just it happened. It was all there, and I knew the characters, and I knew the names, and I knew where I wanted the story to go, and yeah. I mean, it took me 6 years to finish the first draft.
I mean,
Yeah, at least.
that's really cool though, because like I feel like oftentimes, and this is good for authors watching or aspiring authors. I can't words. I needed more of that iced coffee before the stream. For aspiring authors watching, knowing that like it's a struggle. Like
Yeah.
authors are the most gluttons for punishment, I think, out of any occupation or hobby there is.
Yeah.
So, like, going and looking at it and being like, hey, like, I have this idea, but it doesn't come to fruition the way that you were hoping it was. And then it's
Mhm.
like, okay, well, I'm going to try this idea. And then all of a sudden, it completely pivots to a completely different thing. And you're like,
Yeah.
I mean, okay, that wasn't what we were going for, but sure, why not?
Yeah.
I think it just goes to show that like writing it's different for everybody. Cause like it took me no, not that long. 10 years. Cause I'm old. 10 years to finally get to a place where my book even made any sort of sense and was finished. And then it completely changed during the second draft. Like my first book had like muskets and cannons and like all this other stuff. And anybody who's read my first book, they'd be like, what? Like that dramatically changes everything in your world. I'm like, I know that's why it didn't happen in the second draft. But it's like you just sometimes it then just clicks. But
Yeah.
it's that process. It's that
Mhm.
practicing for all of the years leading up to that
Yeah.
makes that happen. It's just not a thing that just pops up out of nowhere. Like
Yeah.
it's taken practice and dedication to the craft to get to that point.
It's also one of those careers that it's like I don't know any other career where you tell someone it's like, "Oh yeah, I love writing." It's like, "Oh, so how often do you do it?" It's like, "I avoid it at all costs. What are you talking about?"
Yes.
Like,
Yes. It's so accurate. So like, so do you write like every day? Be like
no.
once a, once a month, like 500 words. Like, how do you get books done? Because at some point, I'm just gonna have a sleepless night and write a book. Until
Yep.
then, I will be procrastinating my backside off to avoid it.
Yeah. And it's also one of the only like it's one of the few creative jobs where half the job is sitting at a blank page daydreaming. Like, that is
Yeah,
working, which is so
yeah,
crazy to think about 'cause you're like, "But you're not nothing's happening." But it's like, "Yeah, but I'm all like, it's all happening up here. All the cogs are turning. They might not all
yeah,
be turning the same direction, and the clock might not be ticking, but they're turning."
yeah, yeah. They're doing something. There was a couple of times where I wrote myself. This is when I was writing my second book. I wrote myself into such a wall that it took 3 months of basically avoiding the entire thing before my brain finally was just like and it put the piece together. I was like, that's how we do it. Oh,
And then it's
okay. And then we
crazy.
finished it.
Yeah. And then it's crazy to look back and be like, "I said," but it's like your brain clicks it together, right? And then you look back at the first draft and you're like, "I set the seeds for this 5 years ago.
Yes.
I didn't know what I was setting the seeds for."
Yeah.
I thought I was
Yeah.
planting an apple tree, out came a pear tree, but a pear
Yeah.
tree was what I needed for the book.
Yeah. I get nostalgic every now and then because behind this ugly what's left of a sound booth, is the file cabinet with all of my story ideas and notes, so many notebooks for my entire series. And in there is my Lord of the Rings meets Narnia smash up fan fiction that I started writing when I was like 16. And I was reading back through it. I'm like, wow, paragraphs weren't a thing when I started writing. That's fun. This hurts my brain a lot. Punctuation was an option. And then I get to a part where I'm just like, oh, so that's where that idea came from. All the way back there. I was like, so I've carried this thing around simmering in the back of my brain, taking up copious amounts of RAM and memory. And it finally, I was like, well, you know what? It got me a first book. So I'm not going to complain too bad. Thank you, Narnia.
Oh man, I never wrote fan fiction. I could never even bring myself to read it. I tried to read it once and I was just cringing so badly. And I was like, no judgment to people who write it or to read it. Like, I understand. I get it. I'm like, no judgment to you. But for me personally, I could not do it.
Yeah.
I was told, I was like, read this one. It's a good fan fiction. I was like, I will try. I got like 2 chapters in and I was like, no.
Yeah. Well, and you had mentioned Wattpad. And I had
I'm guilty though. I am guilty of writing bad half first chapters and posting them on website, which
I mean, you have to get some sort of feedback. That was basically what I came to use Wattpad for. Was I'm like, you are now all of my guinea pigs. So
you got going feedback? To just I was lucky if I got 2 people to see it.
Well, see, I was writing Lord of the Rings fan fiction, so I found a very safe corner of Wattpad away from the perpetual smutty dumpster fires. And
not the One Direction, I've been kidnapped by One Direction fan fiction.
Gosh. Yeah, no, I definitely avoided those. My friends and I were very Cheyenne and Brianna. That's where I met them, was Wattpad. That's how I knew them. And so I've known them for years. And then and then now they're working, at the publisher and helping people with not fan fiction. So
earlier this year, I got an email and it was like, your Wattpad hasn't been used in 5 years. We're going to delete your account. And I was like, go ahead and do that.
I got that same one.
I don't have anything posted there.
I was like, you know what? This is now going to be just a social media profile that exists for my authorness. Nothing's going to happen. It's just going to exist. That's just all that's what it's going to be good for.
I just let them go ahead and delete it. I was like, I can't bring myself to even. I don't remember the email. I don't remember the password. I couldn't even get into it if I tried. It's like my poor webkins. My poor webkins are dead. They've been dead for years.
So, with writing the book, it's 6 years in the making, and that kind of leads
longer, but
ish 6 years ish. It's more of a
set of guidelines. Grade. It's been almost 13 years.
Okay, so it was a slow burn,
Yeah, slow burn. Like I said, it was on the back burner for a long time.
Right. Yeah. It's got to percolate.
It took 6 years to actually write the draft.
Yeah.
Because I always got distracted by other stories, how it is.
Shiny objects are the worst and very easy for authors to fall into.
And we're all crows. All writers are crows. We get distracted by shiny things.
It's true. So the publishing journey, so you've been working on it, and I know your publishing journey because we've talked about it during the onboarding call, and we had gone back and forth in on kind of what your goals were and all that kind of stuff. So why don't you kind of walk through the process for the aspiring writers and the readers who are on, and like, what did it look like for you to get from your little 3rd grade self to starting to finishing, and then becoming a published author?
Yeah. So I will be honest, I had heard that, if you want to break into traditional publishing, you had to have an agent. Um, and that really scared me. So I avoided it at all costs and then was like, how do I still get published if I don't want anyone to read my book? That also typical author conundrum. And whoo, that was a quiver. 1 second. So I had initially kind of decided, I was like, I actually wasn't sure what direction I was going to go with, because when I had finally finished it and I had finally finished the draft that I was like, that I thought was good enough to let other people read, and it was the draft that I finally let my parents read. And I had some weird stuff happen, which is not necessarily part of the publishing journey, but it is part of the story's journey. Was I finished this draft that I was like, this is actually finally good enough to let other people read. I'm going to print out a copy for me to keep, and I'm going to print out a copy for my parents to read, and then I'm going to put that in a box, and I'm going to shove it under my bed, and I'm going to let all of my dreams of being an author die. And for about a day, I was like elated about it. Like, I just felt very like chill. I was just like, yeah, like this is a thing. Like, that's how it works. That's how it goes. You know, I gotta figure out a new life now because I don't have this going for me. And then I think I was at a Bible study, or it was, some gathering of godly women, and I had the realization of like, whoa, that was not a healthy mentality. Like, that was not a good reaction. and and I think now, seeing like what the series has become and what the series is going to be, like, it was probably a bit of spiritual warfare and probably a bit of something trying to be whispering in my ear, like, no, like, just because, you know, like the Lord had to break through and be like, no, I want this story to exist. Because something out there doesn't want it to exist. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And so while I was still in that, do I try self-publishing? Because at the time, my sister was going through the process of self-publishing her first book. I believe so, yeah. And then, but there was also the traditional route, but also I was so overwhelmed at work. And so I had all of these options, and the thing where you have too many options and suddenly I was like, I can't pick anything, I can't choose anything, nothing makes sense. And then on my Instagram popped up this story weaver, and it was like, we want to publish dark, gritty fantasy that is Christian at its core, but doesn't shy away from possible language use or possible violence or a darker tone. And that was one of the things that was such a determining factor. Was one of the reasons I didn't want to go the traditional route, was because I didn't want stuff being forced on my book that I didn't want to put in my book. But at the same time, my book felt too secular in that sense to go with a like Christian publishing house, because I was like, there is a little bit of language, there is a little bit of violence, and book 2 is going to have some darker elements that I'm already working on, that I'm a little nervous to write, but we'll see how it goes. Nervous and excited. I'm getting to do some like eerie Stranger Things things. Not that that makes much sense, but I also just popped up with that.
Having read your book, yes, that does that does make sense.
So then up pops this story weaver, and I saw that the admissions were open and they were closing in like 3 days. I caught the tail end of this, and I was just like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to submit. We'll see how it goes. I submit it, and I believe you also know this part, is that I had to go to the hospital to get my appendix removed. We went in the middle of the night because I was in excruciating pain. My parents came, picked me up from my apartment, took me to the hospital, and at like 5 or 6 in the morning, we get the news that it's appendicitis. I'm gonna go in for surgery. And I grab my phone to text my mom and say, it's appendicitis. And I see an email that's like, congratulations, we want your book. And I'm like crying in the ER, not just from pain. And I'm like, Dad, they want my book. And so I text my mom. I text the screenshot of the email to my mom. And then I also follow up with, also, I have appendicitis. So,
in other news,
whirlwind of emotions. Then we had our initial meeting, but I did end up initially saying no because I felt like I still needed to figure out which route I needed to take. Because it was such a rush to get that submission in, and because I still hadn't quite figured out which route I wanted to go, and this was the first and only place I submitted the book. I felt like I needed to take some time to figure out what I wanted to do with this story. And so I had initially said no, and then I sat on this book for like another 4 months and was like, maybe I should have said yes. Like, why did I say no? But I think saying no was a good learning curve because it made me decide that I was like, actually, I think that is where I would want my book. And then you open submissions again. It was like May or something. And I emailed you back and I was just like, hey,
it's me again.
do you want to publish my book? Was very excited to have you guys say yes. But I think ultimately that ended up working the best on all sides. That initial say no, and then having the opportunity to come back, having my story be appreciated enough that you guys were so excited.
Oh my gosh, we were so sad. We're like, we understood, but we were just like, man, this book is so good. And again, like, I can't emphasize enough to people watching both now and later, I am really good at picking out plot twists. I have been a voracious reader since I was young. I have been writing for 20 years. And so my brain just picks these things out. And the plot twist, as I was let's see, what was I doing? I was listening to it at 1.5 times speed, going through the entire thing the first time. And so I just have chipmunk voices now inside my head for every single character. But the plot twist comes and I was like, oh, I did not see that coming. And that was one of the reasons why I was so sad when you're like, no, I need to still think about it. So I was like, okay, I get it. But like, it was still something that we were talking about just as a team. We're like, man, we really hope she comes back because it was kind of sad that she did. And then we saw the email come back in. We're like, yes, she's back. So yeah, that was a no-brainer. We were just like, yep, moving forward.
Yeah. Well, now I'm curious what plot twist you're talking about. Is it? I mean, I won't say anything spoilerly, but
shoot, I'm trying to remember the instance. But it's I'll tell you after the stream because I don't want to spoil it for anybody else either.
No. Understandable. I'm just curious.
Because you guys have to read it. Like, you guys absolutely have to read this book because you'll know the plot twist. You'll know it when it comes up. And then you're like, that's the thing that bald guy said. He said live stream. This is what we were waiting for. So you guys will know. So yeah, I mean, we were very, very excited, which leads perfectly into, so drawing back the curtain for the everyone watching, both now and later. What has the publishing, need more coffee, publishing process been like, from campaign to now, and then what's been the most challenging part?
Yeah. I would say it's been a very wonderful process on my side. I can't speak the same for you because I know that you guys, you sent an email and you're like, we might get a response in 5 to 8 business weeks. Which I did not know. I did not realize was a bad habit of mine until I was getting emails about stuff all the time. And it was like, oh, I have to respond to this. What if I just ignore it for a little bit longer? And then I was like, hey, did you get my email? I was like, I did. And I panicked. So I would say you guys are a blessing for dealing with me. I'm so sorry about that. And I can't promise it'll get much better here on out, but
I'm just as bad with the team. Brianna, Cheyenne, and Emily have a lot of grace on me.
Yeah. But no, it was, oh gosh, it was so exciting to actually get it in the hands of an editor for the first time and get editing feedback, because that was the first time it had gone through an editor at all. The plot of this book stayed the exact same for 6 years. There was no changes, no additions, because I didn't know what needed to be changed. I didn't know how it needed to be changed up. The feedback I got was people who are not editors, and they were like, yeah, it was good. I was like, cool. Do you have more you can give me? I need more. Is it like good plot? And they're like, plot? I don't know. Who is she? So to get it back, actually editing feedback was phenomenal. It just made me want to cry because it was like, hey, so overall we think it's, pretty easy. Like not a lot of changes need to be made, except these few changes that change the entire plot of the book. I was like,
Super easy, barely an inconvenience.
barely anything needs to be changed, except everything needs to be changed. And then when I was going through it with like a fine-tooth comb, and I was like, ugh. It's like, oh, no wonder I avoided the first chapter. I don't like reading it. Maybe I should fix that. Oh, maybe I should change the sequence that I detest reading to actually be something that's plot relevant. And I'm gonna do that during line edits when I'm supposed to be cutting words, and instead I add too many. I add 7,000 words.
I feel that. I feel that deeply.
But yeah, overall, it was a very good experience, but it was very exciting. It was exciting to start seeing all the elements come together and not have to be the one responsible to do it. Because as I've told some people, if I didn't have you guys doing all the behind the scenes work and cover design and doing the edits and doing a lot of the social media stuff, I am very bad at social media. I'm just coming to terms with it. Yeah, if I didn't have you guys, this book would not be coming out right now, and it would not be existing at this moment, and it would not be the book that's on the shelf right now. Because I did make a lot of, in those couple rounds of edits, I made a lot of story changes, but like the integrity of the scene is still the same, but the setting is completely changed.
Yeah. Well, and for those who like haven't seen it yet, like the book
Yeah.
cover Cheyenne worked on is gorgeous.
It's so beautiful. I was so
Yeah.
excited to see the final product. It was
Yeah.
better than what I was trying to come up with when I was trying to figure out. I was like, maybe I could do my own cover design, and I very quickly learned that was a no.
Cover design is hard. Like,
It's very hard.
yeah,
It's really
there's
hard.
because
I'm
there's so
very
many.
impressed.
This is why I don't touch the social media. Like all the pretty things are Brianna, Emily, and Shy. I don't touch those, and Benita. I can't do that. Mine would be weird blocked shaped things. Like they just have the eye for that, and that's why they do it. But yeah, no, the hardcover
Oh
was
my
a chef's kiss.
gosh. It's so pretty.
That one was so. And by the way, for everybody, like all of what we're talking about here, just tantalizing you with tidbits of the book. It is available. The Wayward Sword is on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. It's on Fable. It's everywhere that you can find a book. It is there. And it's also directly through our website as well. We have direct links to those things. But yeah, if you guys have the opportunity, like the hardcover is absolutely gorgeous. So we figured out a way, thanks to Ingram Spark finally coming into the 21st century, we've opted to do a dust jacketed case laminate, which means we get like the original cover with the little flappies on the side and then a secret cover underneath. That secret cover on the hardcover is my absolute favorite.
I feel like I'm still geeking out about it every time I see a picture of it. I'm just like, that's my book. It's so pretty. And this pirate symbol that I've been trying to imagine for over 6 years. And I was like, it looks cool. Like it actually looks cool conceptually. It's not embarrassing, which I was so worried it would be.
Yeah, no, when Shy had posted that in the administrative section and she's like, how does this look? I was just like, it looks really freaking good in my opinion. Like, what needs to be changed? And I'm like, I'll leave that for Bree because she's got a more eye for it. I'm gonna enjoy the pretty thing because, like, for a hardcover for a case laminate underneath that dust jacket, like chef's kiss.
And I guess I will say, like, that was another part of the publishing process that I really was really grateful for and really glad about was getting to, and this is gonna, I don't know how this is gonna make me sound, but getting to be really picky about how the book cover looked, because I know that a lot of times with traditional publishing, it can be like, okay, you have 2 covers, pick one. And that's about all the choice you get, versus they were like, Cheyenne was like, here's 3 options. Which one do you like the best? And then we'll go from there and we'll fine tune it. And I got to be like, I picture a different sort of font and like kind of like this. And they were like, okay, well, what if we do this? And then the picture, because originally what I had sent her was very flat and it felt very 2D. And she sent back near replicas. And I went, it's too red and it's too flat. And then she came back with this like foggy forest. And I was like, you don't even understand how thematically perfect that is. And it never crossed my mind. That's amazing. That's it. That's the direction we're going. And I could get, it's so cool. It's so exciting. And the spine. I don't know why, but I love how the spine of the book turned out as well.
Yeah. Cheyenne does an amazing job. Like both her and Benita are just ridiculously talented.
Oh my gosh. The like chapter headings, when I saw the formatting, I was like, this is way beyond what I was expecting. It's beautiful. I'm amazed that like this is what my book is going to look like. This is the legacy of my debut, is like this beautiful masterpiece. And unfortunately I wrote it.
Yeah, no, looking at the internal and the map and how it all just comes together is just super cool. So
that map.
the map, like
that map kicked me in the butt.
Mapping is hard.
Well, like I said, I had the map. I've had the map for 13 years, but I had to make it pretty.
Yeah. That's where it goes from like, okay, I drew this like a 4-year-old, but now it has to look like I did it on purpose.
Yes. Yeah. And, it was like at least 40 hours went into that one map. And it was just drawing and then erasing and then drawing and erasing and then drawing on top of what I've already drawn because I didn't draw it right, and then erasing more, and then finding out that this program that I was using had no fonts that I liked. So I was like, guess we're handwriting every single word on the map.
Right.
Yeah, and then the editor, the Benita coming back and being like, so we can't see this middle section, and I was like, but it looks so cool in color, but you can't see it if it's black and white? Like, no! Yeah.
Yeah, author struggles are real.
Yeah. Especially when you've never done graphic design before.
Yeah, that definitely changes things up considerably. And that's where it's good to have someone who knows how to do that.
Oh, yeah. Part of the reason it took so long was because I was learning the program as I was doing it, and then suddenly I was on a time constraint, and I was like, guess I'm doing it. I said I was gonna do it.
Right. So what have you learned about yourself over the last year, your writing, and what the Lord is doing with your story? Because this is probably my favorite question to ask, because I have the privilege of being the head of publishing. So I see these things in their rough form, and I watch them develop at a very high level. And being the person who's in charge of the campaigns and managing the campaigns and managing not just the campaigns, but making sure that the authors don't fall off the emotional precipice, because I've been there. Like, it's so cool to see how the Lord uses not just the campaigns, but the overall process. And so I'm super curious as to what that's looked like for you.
Yeah. I think one of the things that comes to mind is something that I briefly mentioned when you were talking about, like, telling people you want to be an author, and they'll be like, okay, but like, what do you want to do seriously? And how I've kind of never really had that. And I think that's a huge blessing. I've never had that externally, but that's definitely been something that I struggle with internally, is like, okay, like you want to be this big author and you want that to be your job. And I definitely would love to just be able to write books all day and not have to worry about taxes and feeding myself or whatever, those pointless things that happen. But one of the things that this process, when I actually got to tell people, because like I said, because I've been working on this story for so long and I have told so many people, I would have so many people ask questions and be like, so how's your book coming? And I was like, I don't have any news. Like, I don't have anything to say. And so to finally actually get to tell people and be like, it's getting published, like it's actually coming out, it's going to exist, and how much there was an outpour of support into my life from people who love me and people who care about me, and that they believed in my story when it felt like I couldn't believe in my story, or I didn't believe in my story. Like, and my parents are joking when they're like, oh yeah, when you're rich and famous and you can pay off our mortgage, and like, yes, that's a bit of a joke, but they do believe that. They believe in my story, and they believe that it's a really good story. And having so many people in my life who are really excited to see me succeed in this way makes me very emotional.
Yeah.
And it helps to counteract that voice in my head that tries to tell me that, like, like, cool, you're gonna sell like 2 books and then that's gonna be it. Whereas I now know it's 3 because I just got a text from a friend with an order confirmation.
Oh.
And I was just like, heck yeah, I'm on my way to the top. Just how many people have supported me in this endeavor, and how many of my coworkers who have just been pestering me, lovingly pestering me. It's a wonderful problem to have where they're just like, books coming out, are you excited? Like, I'm gonna order it. When is it coming out? What's the title? What's your pen name? And like being like, oh, I'm gonna have to face these people. It's gonna be really awkward if they don't like this book, but okay. But no, just hearing how much my parents, who, like I said, are pretty big readers and know what, like, when a story is a good story, and that they're like, no, this is a good story. Like, there's a lot of heart here, there's a lot of depth, and there's a lot of complexity to these characters, and it's a very beautiful story, and that's wonderful to hear, because I think we're all a little bit vain about our writing and we like to hear good things about it.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's emboldening to be like, okay, I actually can do this. I mean, I have learned about like I said, I've learned about myself in the last year is that I'm really bad at social media. And unfortunately, I chose a medium where I do kind of have to market my own book. And so that'll be an interesting curve that I got to figure out, because I've also learned that I'm weird about filming myself. Like, this is no problem, but putting my phone up and filming a silly reel to try and market my book, that I have so much trouble marketing because it sounds like a very basic plot line, but it's also, there's all these little complexities that totally change everything. It was very refreshing during the process to come to you guys and be like, do you understand why I had a hard time selling this? Like, after you guys read it, and then to hear, yeah, I get why you were having trouble. Like, thank you. I've been so boxed in. So that's a challenge that I'm gonna have to overcome. But I think, as someone who struggled with a lot of insecurity, and I think that definitely comes out in my characters. It comes out in some of the characters in this book, and there's definitely there's a couple characters moving forward that are going to get introduced later in the series, that also struggle with that. But to know that, like, I have people who have my back and who love me and care about me and care about this story, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing when people like you, right? When they love you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So weird.
It is, though. Like, writing it can be incredibly lonely, because very few people, except for other authors, can really understand the amount of work and stress that goes into writing a book at any point in time. And it's a lot. And then you take into account, having to market a book. And I don't know a single author who enjoys marketing a book. So, like, it's not a fun pastime, but the support makes a world of difference in those lows. And for authors, whether they're in the midst of that right now, or they're kind of like thinking about it, or they've been published but they're just kind of like, I don't know what the heck to do, like, find a support. Like, find a group of people who will help support you in that, because you can't do authoring alone. Like, it's just miserable. Like, I know we talk about wanting to be alone, but it's also like, I need a safety buddy. Just don't talk to me. I just need you physically present. Don't ask questions. Just be there.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah.
the last question before we dive into the Q&A, which I'm very excited for, because we've had a few people drop some stuff in there, is, lastly, so like, where can readers find you, and like, what is next for the story?
Oh, that's so exciting. Readers can find me on Instagram. Unfortunately, I am not on like TikTok or anything, though that I've heard that's a pretty good platform. Instagram sucks enough of my life away. I don't need to add TikTok to the mix. But you can find me. My username is random writings with a W in front of the random. Because I like being a silly goose, apparently, and making everything more complicated. That's pretty much the only place I'm at. But as for what comes next for the story, I am working on book 2. I already had one of the backers come back to me, who is my best friend's mother. She read it and she was like, "So this book was amazing. Where's book 2?" And I was like, I'm like 40,000 words in, and we're not even halfway through the draft, so we'll see. Yeah, this is gonna be a big one. It's gonna be a whopper, but yes, I'm working on book 2, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Nice. So we have now come to that time, ladies and gentlefolk, that it is the Q&A with Lindsay. So I am going back through the comments right now, and if you have questions based on anything that you've heard so far, or you just have that I need to know, I see that my son is also contributing to the chat via my wife. All right, so let's see. So working at Emily. So Emily Vest, for those who don't know, she is our lead developmental editor. So she was the basically tackling the first round of edits with Lindsay, focusing on that kind of like big kind of 30,000 foot picture. And then Nora, who is also one of our Storyweaver authors, her book is coming out next year. Glad Nora was able to join us. So these comments go back to kind of the beginning of the stream. So like, also hated reading. I can relate. My passion for reading really didn't start till until I got into like Narnia. Then Narnia was the gateway drug to so many things.
Oh yeah, see, funny enough, I didn't read Narnia until I was an adult, but I had the movies, and I loved that first movie. Oh my gosh, it's still like top tier for me.
First movie was peak. I am very concerned about the one that's being redone by Netflix.
Tell me about it. I think everyone's worried about it.
Yeah, everyone's just like, oh no.
I think that's the reason they haven't officially confirmed that casting of Aslan. Sounds like that they were going to go that direction, and they got such backlash that they're like, should we consider, or should we just stick our foot down?
Yeah. So Nora said, my mom also had to force me to read as a child.
What is with this theme of, it's like, oh yeah, I want to write books now, but I couldn't read them when I was a kid. I didn't want to read it.
Yeah. Yep. It does seem. And then Emily also understands the Wattpad.
Yeah.
And looks like Nora was an AO3. I never got into that one. I read a few stories because my friend had posted on there, but I never got into that one.
I only recently learned what AO3 even stood for, but I was gonna say something that I probably shouldn't say online, but if you forced me to tell you what those letters meant, I could not tell you for the life of me.
Then, so Emily read The Dragon Princess by Edie Baker.
Oh.
And belated realized started
Yes.
in the middle of the series.
Yes. Because that's when Dragon's Breath is the second one. The first one is The Frog Princess, which I fell in love with. I loved. My dad read them actually as well. He took them to his big job at Xerox and was reading really little pink and purple books because he loves his daughters.
And good book is a good book.
Yeah. I'm hoping someday to have someone to read them with. So
then Cheyenne had posted on the Instagram live stream. Tolkien invents a language and writes an epic fantasy world to go with it. Lindsay draws a map and writes an epic fantasy story to go with it.
Yeah. It did not start out epically. It started out epic fail. We worked our way up to epic.
Yeah. And then maps are the gateway drugs to fantasy.
Yes.
It's just it is how it is.
Yeah.
And we're not ashamed of it. Honeycomb Author Services. So questions for Lindsay. What was the most surprising thing about writing and publishing, or about the writing and publishing process looking back?
Yeah. Well, I'd say one of the most surprising things about the publishing process, like how many little things I would have dropped the ball on had I not had a team who knew what they were doing. Like I'm so glad I didn't try and self-publish, because they're like, oh yeah, so we're getting the ISBN and we're getting set up on all these apps and doing all this stuff. And I was like, what's an ISBN? What is that? What? I know about the cover. What's the cover? Is the cover pretty? Yeah. As for like about the surprising thing about writing. Ooh. One thing I definitely noticed was that depending on where I was at when I was doing edits, came out more in my characters. So I think when I first started writing the series, Aaren, my main character, was very angry. Very angry. Everything was mean that she was saying. And I think at that time I was very like frustrated high schooler. It doesn't surprise me looking back. I'm like, high schooler full of rage. What is that? Why I came across angry? And over time, she definitely softened, especially at my father's encouraging. He was just like, she's very angry. I kind of wanted to punch her. So that may be something you should fix. And I was like, okay, I see where you're coming from. And I will say that this most recent iteration, there was a lot more of like anxiety. And I think it was because when I was doing line edits, I was behind schedule. So I was anxious. And so it came out a lot more. But it still felt true to the character. And some of the moments she goes through, and I was just like, well, yeah, I guess I had kind of established this in an earlier thing, and it just popped out in this scene. But it was just, yeah, sometimes I was writing a scene and I was just like, maybe I need to step back because that's just me and what I'm feeling in this moment and not what the character should be feeling. So, yeah. What your mental state is when you're writing, it comes out through your hands.
Yes, it does.
These puppies.
That is very, very true. And Emily, and we were so glad you came back, referencing for those who are joining now, when Lindsay came back and submitted for the second time to us, and then her book was accepted. Connor asks, what has been the most rewarding aspect of your journey from first concepts to becoming a published author? Can't wait to start reading.
Oh gosh, I guess seeing it come to life, like from going to just like normal pages to like when I saw that draft of what it looks like on the inside, and it was so pretty. It was way prettier than anything I was imagined. to actually see it come to fruition is just so cool. But definitely, like, cover design was one of the most exciting parts, was getting to actually see like what the first impression is going to be of this story. Was so fun. It was so cool.
I think between cover design and the book actually like being out there, those typically I've noticed are like the two main highlights, because it's real. Like the thing that you've been working on forever like has a face,
Yes,
like that
yes,
kind
that's
of thing.
exactly what it is. It's like I finally, it's sometimes like when you're working on a project and you don't have a title for it for a long time. I don't experience this much because I have like I'm like a titling fiend. I have to have a title for everything. But when you find that like perfect title that just encompasses the story, yeah, that's another fun story about the title for this book that maybe I'll share. I could share now or I could share later. Who knows?
Yeah, feel free.
Yeah. Well, it's so the original title, the working title for a long time was Pirate Akir. Because I was like, yeah, that fits. That, it was one of the first projects where I had like a working title. And I was like, well, that shouldn't be what the actual title is because it didn't feel right. But I did subconsciously know that the titles should be based on the characters. So maybe this is a bit of a spoiler, but the Wayward Sword is the main character. Like that is the connection, but you get to understand that more. But I could not figure out a title for this first book until I came up with a title for the last book. So the last book in the series was the first one to get its title. And then I worked backwards from there. And I knew I wanted to be the blank sword, but I could not figure out what I wanted that blank word to be. And then eventually I kind of was like, Wayward feels right. Like it's kind of this off kilter, askew, sort of lost in the moment type of character. Yeah, and then I was like, that's the title.
Nice.
That's where it goes. So I guess that's another rewarding aspect, was getting to actually come up with a title and feel like it's the right title.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Titling a book is rewarding and also incredibly frustrating.
Yes. Especially because there's definitely a titling theme going around right now.
Yeah.
A bowl of mac and cheese.
So Emily bought her copy the morning it came out.
Woo-hoo!
And then this was my son via my wife. Dad, when do I get to read it? I'll answer that off screen, my son. And then Emily asked, if you could spend a day with one character from the Wayward Sword, who would it be and why? And then also, how would you spend the day?
Oh gosh, this is a hard question. I feel like my gut instinct would be Redblade. I think he'd be a very interesting person to chat with. Not that I'm sure he would actually chat with me, because he'd probably be like, "Who are you?" But he is definitely one of those characters that had to go through some evolutions and had to go through some changes, and I'm very proud with where I was encouraged to go with his character, especially in this, what is actually out in the world and exists, and I now can no longer edit, which is scary and not at all making me sweat. But yeah, I think considering like what we learned about his past, and I won't go into details because it is a little bit of a spoiler, but there is a bit of a past there. And knowing what I know, as the little god of my game board, it would be interesting. But as for how I'd spend the day, I would probably have to be like, on the pirate ship. You know, if I'm going to talk to the pirate captain, I gotta be on the pirate ship. You know, which would be cool because I'm like, I don't know how the layout of that ship works, but it works apparently. Nobody's questioned the layout.
It's like, you know, sometimes just a little bit of ambiguity just goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's got a
if I
mast.
got
I know that.
if I got a if I got to spend it with somebody, I would probably go with Daniel. Just because I really liked his character just in the overall arc. Broseph put up with a lot from angry Aaren in the first draft that I had seen, and you know, not having read it since,
she's toned
you
out
know,
a little bit. She's toned out a little bit, but
yeah.
yeah.
But
Still
Daniel would
equally
probably be who I'd hang out with. He seemed like a pretty legit guy. So
yeah.
Broseph could show me how to throw knives.
He doesn't throw knives.
Well, then we'd both be learning how to throw knives and probably failing horribly. And then over on the Instagram, Guy Tost is hiring. What hints can you give for the rest of the series?
Ooh.
There's a lot to unpack on that one because there's stuff I don't even know about.
Yeah, there are some. Ooh. Oh my gosh. Now I'm like, I feel pressured to like give the right hint, you know?
Yeah, it's no pressure that you would spoil your entire series or anything like that by answering this question, but
yeah. My inclination is to say like pay attention. There's some little moments that Brianna brought up during line edits, and she was like, hey, this doesn't really make sense, maybe we change it. And I was like, oh, we're not going to do that because that is foreshadowing. I'm a foreshadowing gremlin. So I guess would kind of just like maybe a hint would be pay attention to some of those little things that don't seem to make sense. That might be too vague, but there's especially one character in particular that there was a little bit of this in the earlier drafts, but especially in this one, there seems to be some like memory problems around him. Like, who is noticing this character in these scenes? So,
interesting.
That's the one that comes to mind is like pay attention to like who is part of the scene but kind of keeps getting left out of it, and then who is leaving him out of the conversation, I would guess, is one way to say it.
Interesting. I like it.
So hopefully that's not too big a hit.
No, I think that's a good hint because like there were little moments that I remember even when I was going through the first time where like a character looked at something and I'm like foreshadowing, and I kind of guessed what it was, but still it was in those smaller moments when some of those things are pointed out and left as a breadcrumb for the reader, because as soon as that plot twist lands, all of a sudden the reader's brain like goes in reverse and goes all the way back to that first breadcrumb, and they start going like that conspiracy theory with the red lines, and they're like, wait a minute, all of this is connected.
Oh yeah, I have some stuff planned for way down the line that I'm like, that's going to make this scene hit so much harder, but you have no idea.
Oh yeah, those are the fun ones. Those are the fun ones to read.
It's supposed to be heartbreaking actually, but you know.
Well, fun for us still mildly
Fun is
heartbreaking for
fun is the
us, but
author.
mostly to evoke pain and agony within the readers.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Because that's how we keep going, is inflicting pain on other people.
Yeah, that's kind of a part of the story. It's kind of how it has to go.
It's true. So unless we get any other questions popping up, we're kind of going to start wrapping up here. But Lindsay, I know that for those who have been with us, thank you for joining and watching King Genie. Happy that you've been able to be here, and yes, it's going to be awesome. But very, very briefly, because I realized that I completely forgot to address it at the very beginning of the stream an hour and a half ago. What is the Wayward Sword about?
Oh, now I get put on the spot for my favorite question ever. Well, I would say, to put it very plainly, the main chunk of the plot is about this pirate girl named Aaren, who her crew does not know that she is a girl, as a typical fantasy trope. But unlike a typical fantasy trope, this gets revealed immediately. And so her crew gets very upset because she is the second in command to the captain, which means she gets some like perks. And they're like, well, did you earn those perks because you're good at your job or because of your past and who you are? So they're like, we think you should go prove your worth and actually prove that you deserve to be a part of this crew. And so she decides to go through with it. She has no other choice. But then along the way, as she's heading inland, she is tasked to rob the king. She's going to rob the king of the land. But along the way, she discovers that there are like these creatures that are popping up that are like from legend, apparently, and also that there's a crazy cultist guy who's going around killing girls, and she is his next target. So that's really unfortunate. There's also another character named Mina, who is a princess of another realm in the story, and she's getting a lot of world building, politicking. She's dealing with the other aspect of the cult, and propaganda is a big thing in her plotline. And I'm so good at this question. Do I get an A plus?
I'd give you an A plus. I mean, and those creatures are spooky. Like, even I would just, ugh. So no, very, very well done. It's a fantastic book. King Genie gives an A plus. I saw that. No, I mean, absolutely fantastic book. Very excited that it's out there. For those who might have missed it at the beginning, Lindsay's book, her debut novel, has opened as the #1 new release for teen and young adult in the values and virtues category, which is always exciting to see a book get the recognition it deserves within a category. It's hard to do. So I know that from us at Storyweaver, we are very proud of all the hard work that Lindsay has put in, and very excited to see where the rest of it goes. Again, you guys can find it just about anywhere books are sold, including through the Storyweaver Publishing website. You can go there, and it does contribute more directly to Lindsay. than going through Amazon. Amazon sales are fantastic. Lindsay makes more when you buy through us. So, which is always happy because we want to make sure that, she's paid. It's because royalties are very happy things. It's that hard-earned earning back that blood, sweat, and tears that you poured out.
It's kind of the unfortunate part. It's less like, I want you to read a book, but also means you have to buy it, which also means I get money. But it's like, I also want to just share the story with you, but also I would like to get paid. Money can be exchanged for goods and services, and technically this is a little of both.
Exactly. So thank you guys again. And feel free to continue to drop comments on the YouTube channel. We'll be answering questions even after the live stream ends, and we can always shoot them over to Lindsay. So thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you all again next time.